So here's the thing about Jake Brennan. He was a botanist. A good one, technically. He had degrees, publications, the whole 9 yards. But he also had what his colleagues back on Earth politely called an adventurous palate, and what his mother less politely called a death wish disguised as curiosity. Which is probably why the Galactic Research Consortium thought it would be hilarious to stick him on the interstellar research vessel Probable Mistake. Yes, that was the actual name. No, nobody thought this was a red flag. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Quillnax, certainly saw the red flags. All of them. Quillnax was an insectoid from Chitrix Prime, which meant he had compound eyes that could see approximately 17 more colors than humans, 4 arms that never stopped moving, and an exoskeleton that vibrated whenever he was stressed. Around Jake, Quillnax vibrated constantly. The ship's hull hummed in sympathy. "Brennan," Quillnax would say, antennae twitching nervously, "the sample from Sector 9 is not for consumption. It is for analysis. Analysis means looking, not tasting." "Sure thing, Doc," Jake would reply, already wondering if the sample would pair well with the definitely not expired yogurt in his quarters. The crew had learned to keep their distance during Jake's lab hours. Commander Reeve, a 7-foot reptilian officer whose scales were the color of disappointment, had instituted a strict policy of locked storage for anything Jake showed too much interest in. Reeve ran the ship like a military operation, which clashed beautifully with Jake's philosophy of rules are more like suggestions, and suggestions are more like interesting challenges. Then there was Pip. Pip was a gelatinous blob from Andromeda Sector 12 who served as the ship's engineer. Pip communicated through color changes, had no discernible organs, and had somehow decided that Jake was the most entertaining creature in the known universe. When Pip wobbled into the lab turning a shade of cyan, Jake knew he had at least one ally in his ongoing quest to treat xenobiology like a cooking show. "Morning, Pip," Jake said, examining a tray of specimens from their latest planetary survey. "Check out these beauties. Bioluminescent fungi from that moon we passed last week." Pip rippled with interested purple. "No, I haven't tried them yet. Quillnax literally installed a motion sensor that alerts him if I open my mouth within 3 feet of the sample containers." Pip jiggled in what Jake had learned to interpret as silent laughter. This was Jake's life now, cataloging the universe's botanical wonders while being actively prevented from his true calling, discovering which alien plants made decent salads, Earth's evolutionary gauntlet of poisonous berries, toxic mushrooms, and that one fish that could kill you 7 different ways had apparently prepared humanity for nothing, because the galaxy's plants made Earth's flora look like a kindergarten safety course. But Jake Brennan didn't get multiple degrees in xenobotany to just look at plants. He got them to find out what they tasted like. And today, whether Dr. Quillnax's vibrating exoskeleton could handle it or not, they were heading to planet Crix 7, which according to preliminary scans was absolutely covered in interesting vegetation. Jake couldn't wait. Quillnax, monitoring Jake's biometrics from Medical Bay, saw his heart rate increase with anticipation and started vibrating harder. It was going to be a long day. The briefing room on the Probable Mistake was designed for efficiency, which meant it was cramped, poorly ventilated, and had lighting that made everyone look vaguely ill. Commander Reeve stood at the front, pulling up holographic displays of Planet Crix 7 with his clawed hands. "Simple collection mission," Reeve announced, his voice carrying that tone of someone who knew nothing was ever simple. "Gather samples, document findings, return to ship. Do not provoke wildlife. Do not contaminate ecosystems. Do not, under any circumstances, give Brennan unsupervised access to anything." Jake raised his hand. "That last one isn't really a mission parameter, Commander." "It is now." "Doctor." Quillnax stepped forward, all 4 arms clutching data tablets, his antennae practically vibrating off his head. "Team, please direct your attention to the botanical survey data. Crix 7's flora operates on a sulfur-based biochemistry that is incompatible with 73% of known species. These plants are not merely toxic, they are aggressively lethal. Observe." The hologram shifted to show a chart that was essentially a rainbow of doom. Red for immediate cellular breakdown, purple for neural system shutdown, orange for spontaneous combustion somehow. "The berries," Quillnax continued, zooming in on a cluster of vibrant purple spheres. Particularly these specimens were calling Mortis Beritus, because naming things properly seemed less important than conveying how much they will kill you. "Contain compounds that cause cascading organ failure in every tested species. Every single one." Jake leaned forward, studying the berries. They were beautiful, honestly. Deep purple with an iridescent sheen, growing in perfect clusters. They looked like someone had taken Earth grapes and upgraded them to premium status. Define every tested species, Jake said. Quillnax's vibrating intensified. Every species in the Galactic database. 47,000 cataloged life forms. The berries have a 100% fatality rate. But has anyone tested humans specifically? Brennan, so help me. I'm just saying, sample size matters, Doc. Commander Reeves' tail slapped the floor with a sound like a gavel. No one is testing anything. We collect sealed samples and leave. Understood? Everyone nodded. Jake nodded too, but he had that look in his eyes that made Quillnax's exoskeleton rattle like a bag of crystals. 20 minutes later, they were planetside. Crick 7 was gorgeous in that this definitely wants to kill you way that the galaxy seemed to specialize in. The sky was orange, the vegetation was various shades of purple and silver, and the air had a faint metallic tang that the suit filters handled easily. Jake's boots had barely touched alien soil before he spotted them. A whole bush of the forbidden berries, practically glowing in the strange sunlight, looking more delicious than anything had a right to be. Brennan, Quillnax warned, appearing beside him with a scanner. I can see your pupils dilating. Step away from the mortis baratus. Just taking samples, Doc. Protocols and all that. Sealed samples, in containment vessels, which you then do not open, or smell, or think about too fondly. Jake carefully plucked several berry clusters with his collection tools, depositing most of them into proper containment. Most of them. A few somehow ended up in his jacket pocket. For science. Definitely for science. Quillnax's scanner beeped. He looked at Jake. He looked at the scanner. He looked at Jake's pocket, which was glowing slightly. Empty your pockets. These pockets? These are empty pockets. Regulation empty. Brennan. Tell you what, Doc. How about we get the rest of these samples and we can discuss my pocket situation back on the ship over some nice, safe, non-lethal cafeteria food? Quillnax knew he'd already lost this battle. He could feel it in his vibrating exoskeleton. But he pulled out a secondary scanner anyway and pointed it at Jake with all four arms crossed in what he hoped was an intimidating posture. If you consume those berries, I am filing formal charges of suicide by stupidity. Jake grinned. Put it on my tab, Doc. Pip wobbled over, flashing concerned yellow at both of them. The probable mistakes crew had no idea that in approximately 4 hours, their human botanist was going to rewrite several chapters of the Galactic medical database. With a blender. Jake's quarters weren't fancy, but they had the one thing he truly needed, a small kitchenette that the ship's designers had included under the naive assumption that crew members would use it for reheating rations. They had not anticipated Jake Brennan, who'd smuggled aboard a 12-speed blender that he'd named the Hypothesis Tester. He pulled the glowing purple berries from his pocket and lined them up on his tiny counter like precious gemstones. Which, to be fair, they kind of were. Deadly, toxic, absolutely forbidden gemstones. Okay, Jake said to himself, because talking through dangerous decisions made them feel more scientific. Earth evolution exposed humans to nightshade, poison ivy, pufferfish, and gas station sushi. Clearly, this prepared us for anything. The berries went into the blender. He added some water from the ship's filtration system, a scoop of protein powder he'd brought from Earth, and just a touch of that weird purple fruit from Kepler 442b that technically hadn't killed him last month. The blender roared to life. The resulting smoothie looked like someone had liquefied a nebula. It glowed. Actually glowed. The purple was so vibrant it almost hurt to look at, and small particles sparkled in the mixture like edible glitter designed by a star going supernova. Jake poured himself a glass. He'd just raised it to his lips when his door chimed. Come in, he called. The door slid open and Dr. Quillnax entered, probably doing his routine check on whether Jake was still alive. His compound eyes immediately locked onto the blender, then the glass, then Jake's hand moving steadily toward his mouth. Don't eat that! But Jake had already taken a sip. Quillnax's scream could probably be heard in the cargo bay. All four of his arms shot into the air like he was trying to physically stop time itself. His exoskeleton vibrated so hard that Jake's coffee mug started sliding across the counter. Too late, Doc, Jake said, smacking his lips thoughtfully. Oh wow, that's actually incredible. Tastes. Like mango had a baby with stardust. Want some? Want some? Want some? Quillnax was physically incapable of going into shock, but he was clearly trying. Those berries cause organ failure in every known species. You just drank liquefied death. I feel fine. Actually, I feel great. Jake flexed experimentally. Maybe a little tingly? But like, good tingly. Quillnax scrambled for his medical scanner, waving it frantically over Jake's body. Your cellular structure is This doesn't make sense. You should be decomposing right now. Instead, I made enough for the whole crew. Jake gestured to the blender, which was still 3/4 full. Seemed rude not to share. Share. Brennan, you've created a biological weapon. I've created a smoothie, Doc. There's a difference. Pip oozed through the door, attracted by Quilnax's screaming. The gelatinous engineer took one look at the glowing beverage and flashed curious orange. Don't you dare, Pip, Quilnax warned. That liquid is certain death. But Pip had already extended a pseudopod and absorbed a small sample. The engineer's entire body rippled, shifted through several colors, and then settled into a pleased shade of amber. Pip's usual wobbly consistency seemed somehow firmer, more stable. Quilnax looked like he was about to have an aneurysm, if his species could get aneurysms. Jake, feeling vindicated and generous, poured several more cups. You know what? I'm taking this to the mess hall. Everyone deserves a chance to try alien berry bliss. You will do no such thing. Quilnax blocked the door with all 4 arms spread wide. I am placing you under medical quarantine until we determine why you haven't died yet. Doc, I'm fine. Pip's fine. Look how amber Pip is. When's the last time you saw Pip that amber? Pip wobbled in agreement. 3 crew members passed by Jake's open door, curious about the commotion. A navigation officer named Krell, an engineering tech named Blix, and a communications specialist whose name Jake could never pronounce but involved several clicks. Free smoothies, Jake announced, holding up cups. Probably not poisonous. Definitely poisonous, Quilnax corrected. Probably not, Jake repeated with a grin. Krell, who had the survival instincts of a lemming, shrugged and took a cup. Human food hasn't killed me yet. That's because I don't let you near human food. Quilnax was practically vibrating out of his exoskeleton. Blix and the communications officer exchanged glances, then figured if Krell was drinking it, how bad could it be? They each took a cup. Quilnax pulled up his medical scanner with shaking hands, already composing the incident report in his head. He was going to need so many forms. Jake raised his glass in a toast. To humanity's questionable decision-making skills. May they continue confusing the galaxy. 4 crew members drank deeply while their medical officer watched in abject horror. The probable mistake's main computer logged the timestamp for future reference. The exact moment, Dr. Quilnax's faith in a rational universe completely evaporated. An hour passed. Dr. Quilnax sat in the mess hall with his medical scanner, monitoring the 4 idiots who'd consumed what should have been their last meal. Jake was casually eating actual cafeteria food like he hadn't just ingested concentrated death. Pip wobbled contentedly in the corner, still that unusual shade of stable amber. Krell, Blix, and the communications officer were comparing notes on the flavor profile. Definitely mango, Blix was saying. But also something else. Like starlight? You can't taste starlight, Krell argued. Then you explain the flavor. Quilnax's scanner beeped, then beeped again. Then made a sound it had definitely never made before. Something between confusion and mechanical panic. Impossible, Quilnax muttered, checking the readings for the 7th time. Jake leaned over. What's impossible, Doc? You're not dying. Yeah, we established that. No, you don't understand. You're not even slightly unwell. Your cellular regeneration has increased by 12%. Your neural activity is optimal. Your immune response is actually improved. Quilnax's antennae drooped in defeat. The berries aren't killing you. They're making you healthier. Commander Reeve chose that moment to stride into the mess hall, scales glinting under the fluorescent lights. Quilnax, I received your emergency medical alert. What's the situation? Brennan made a smoothie. Reeve's reptilian eyes narrowed. And, from the mortis baritus berries. The commander's tail went rigid. The ones that cause cascading organ failure? Those exact ones, yes. And Brennan is? Fine. Better than fine. Enhanced, somehow. Reeve turned slowly to look at Jake, who waved cheerfully with his empty smoothie cup. The commander's expression went through several stages of emotion that roughly translated to, why is this my life? Brennan, you violated quarantine protocols, consumed a Class A toxic specimen, and survived? I didn't just survive, Commander. I thrived. Want to arm wrestle? I feel like I could arm wrestle. You're confined to quarters pending investigation. Can I bring the blender? No. 2 hours later, the situation got weirder. Krell reported to medical because his chronic space sickness, the vertigo that plagued half the crew on long voyages, had completely vanished. Blix discovered their eyesight had sharpened to the point where they could read text 3 meters away that had been blurry that morning. The communications officer found they could suddenly detect frequencies they'd never heard before. And Pip? Pip's gelatinous matrix had stabilized to a degree that engineering had been trying to achieve with medication for months. Quillnax ran every test in the medical database. Then he ran them again. Then he connected to the Galactic Medical Network and pulled up every single recorded instance of mortis baritus exposure, 4,723 cases, 4,723 fatalities, 100% mortality rate across 47,000 cataloged species. Except now there were 5 survivors, on this ship, drinking smoothies. This doesn't make sense, Quillnax said, displaying the data for Commander Reeve in the medical bay. The chemical compounds in those berries are designed to be universally toxic. They bind to cellular membranes and trigger apoptosis, programmed cell death. It works on silicon-based lifeforms, carbon-based lifeforms, even the weird phosphorus-based species from the Andromeda sector. But not humans, Reeve said. Apparently not humans, or Pip's species, or Krell's, or Blix's, or Quillnax pulled up a biochemical analysis. Wait. This is fascinating and terrible. Explain. The berries contain compounds that are toxic to most species because they exploit common evolutionary vulnerabilities. But these 5 species, including humans, have biochemistry that's just different enough. The compounds don't trigger cell death. They trigger something else. Enhanced cellular repair. Optimized neural function. It's like the berries are a universal poison that accidentally becomes a universal medicine for the statistical outliers. Reeve leaned back, processing this. How many species in the galaxy have compatible biochemistry? Quillnax checked. According to this, maybe 0.03%. Roughly 400 species out of millions. And humans are one of them. Which nobody knew, because apparently humans are the only species crazy enough to blend Category A toxic materials into a beverage and consume it voluntarily. Back in his quarters, Jake was reviewing botanical data when his communicator chimed. It was a message from the Galactic Medical Council, forwarded through Quillnax. The message was professionally worded, but basically boiled down to, "What the hell is happening on your ship? And please tell us this is a prank." Jake grinned and sent back a selfie holding his smoothie cup with the caption, "Human ingenuity, turning your poison into our protein shake." Quillnax, reading the message, made a sound like a tea kettle having an existential crisis. Commander Reeve stood in his office, staring at the incident report he was supposed to file. Under violation type, he'd written Protocols 7, 12, 18, and Common Sense. Under outcome, he'd written somehow positive. He deleted the question mark, then added it back, then deleted it again. His communicator buzzed. 3 more crew members were requesting access to Jake's quarters, asking if there were any smoothies left. Reeve closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to transfer to a ship with a normal crew. Somewhere in the lab, Pip had turned a victorious shade of green and was already planning which forbidden plant Jake should experiment with next. By the 3rd day, Jake Brennan had become a legend. Not in the way explorers or war heroes become legends. More in the way someone who survives a lightning strike while juggling chainsaws becomes a legend. Impressive. Definitely. Advisable? Absolutely not. Word had spread through the ship faster than a hull breach. The human had consumed certain death and turned it into a health supplement. Crew members who'd spent months dealing with chronic space ailments were suddenly very interested in Jake's research methodology. Commander Reeve tried to maintain order. He really did. He issued a ship-wide memo. Under no circumstances are crew members to request, consume, or enable the creation of experimental biological compounds by botanist Brennan. The memo was ignored approximately 14 seconds after it was posted. A line formed outside Jake's quarters. Not a long line, because most species had functioning self-preservation instincts, but long enough that Quillnax had to station himself in a corridor with a medical scanner and what he called his triage clipboard of poor decisions. "This is insanity," Quillnax announced to anyone who would listen. "You're all queuing up to consume untested alien toxins based on one human's inexplicable survival." 4 humans, Krell corrected, walking past feeling better than he had in years. 5 individuals total, Quillnax corrected himself. Out of trillions. "Those are pretty good odds," someone in line said. Quillnax's vibrating reached frequencies that were starting to interfere with communications equipment. Jake, for his part, had stopped making smoothies. Not because Commander Reeve ordered it, but because he'd run out of berries and Quillnax had personally incinerated the remaining samples while crying what Jake assumed were tears but might have been some kind of stress lubricant. Instead, Jake was doing something more productive, writing up his findings for the Galactic Botanical Database. Pip helped, translating Jake's very casual scientific language into something that wouldn't give peer reviewers an aneurysm. The paper was titled Mortis Baritus, a study in species-specific biochemical compatibility, and why sometimes the poison is actually the cure. Who knew? Quillnax refused to co-author it. The Galactic Medical Council's response came through on day 4. It was 6 pages long and could be summarized as, "We are horrified, fascinated, and deeply concerned. Please send detailed metabolic data. Also, please stop." Commander Reeve called a meeting in the briefing room. The entire senior staff attended, including Jake, who brought a protein bar that Quillnax immediately scanned for toxins. "It's just peanut butter, Doc. That's what you said about the berries." Reeve silenced them both with a tail slap. "The Council has requested our findings. Brennan, somehow, your reckless disregard for safety protocols has resulted in a significant medical discovery. Several species can apparently benefit from compounds previously thought universally lethal." "So I'm getting a commendation?" Jake asked hopefully. "You're getting 17 violations added to your record and mandatory supervision during all future planetary expeditions." "That seems fair. However," Reeve continued, and Jake could swear the commander's scales softened slightly, "the Council has authorized continued research, under controlled conditions, with multiple safety officers present, and Quillnax monitoring every single moment." Quillnax vibrated at a frequency that suggested this was not his preferred outcome. "Think of it as job security, Doc," Jake offered. "I think of it as my personal nightmare achieving permanence." Pip wobbled forward, flashing supportive green, and projected a holographic message. Jake's potentially edible discoveries. "A new frontier." "Absolutely not," Reeve said. "We are not branding this." But it was too late. By evening, someone had made shirts. Pip wore one proudly, which was impressive given that Pip had no actual body structure to support fabric. The shirt just kind of floated in the gelatinous mass, visible and deeply concerning. Jake stood in the mess hall that night, watching crew members go about their routines. Krell moved without nausea for the first time in his career. Blix was reading technical manuals without squinting. The communications officer was picking up subspace frequencies that should have been imperceptible. And Pip was holding shape better than ever, working on repairs that required precision the engineer had never quite managed before. Quillnax approached, holding 2 cups of definitely safe, regulation cafeteria beverage. He offered one to Jake. "I still think you're insane," the doctor said. "Probably," Jake agreed. "And reckless. Definitely. And you violated more safety protocols than any crew member in Galactic Research Consortium history. I'm honored." "Truly." Quillnax's antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. "But I suppose, very occasionally, in extremely specific circumstances that should never be replicated, human recklessness has merit." "Was that a compliment, Doc?" "It was an acknowledgement of statistical anomaly. Don't let it go to your head." They clinked cups. Jake smiled. Somewhere in the distance, Commander Reeve was updating the ship's protocols to include an entire section dedicated to Brennan-specific containment procedures. It was, all things considered, a pretty good day aboard the probable mistake. And in his quarters, Jake had already started taking notes on a fascinating fungus they'd cataloged last week. It was labeled "Causes immediate neural shutdown in all tested species." All tested species. Jake grinned. Research, after all, was never truly finished. 3 days later, Jake found himself back in the ship's greenhouse lab, surrounded by specimens that represented the galaxy's greatest hits of "please don't touch this." The collection had grown considerably since the Smoothie incident. Apparently, once you survive one universally lethal plant, people start sending you all their other universally lethal plants just to see what happens. Science was weird like that. Jake was examining a particular specimen when Dr. Quillnax entered for his routine, "Make sure the human is still alive, check." The plant in question was a delicate crystalline structure that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Beautiful, really. Also labeled in approximately 14 languages with variations of touching, "This causes immediate neural shutdown." Quillnax saw Jake's expression. That expression, the one that preceded every terrible decision the doctor had witnessed over the past month. Jake was leaning in close, tilting his head like he was considering options. His hand drifted toward his sample kit. Quillnax didn't say anything. He simply turned around and walked back out the door. Just backed away slowly like he'd encountered a predator in the wild. The door slid shut behind him, with a soft hiss that sounded almost sympathetic. In the corridor, Pip was wobbling past on some engineering errand. The gelatinous blob paused, flashing curious yellow, sensing drama. Don't ask, Quilnax said, continuing down the hallway. I don't want to know. I'm going to Medical Bay, where I'm going to update my stress medication and pretend I work on a normal ship with normal crew members who don't treat the universe like a questionable buffet. Pip jiggled in what was definitely laughter and oozed toward the lab to watch whatever was about to happen. Commander Reeve was in his office when the notification hit his terminal. Another ship-wide memo, automatically generated by the protocol system he'd spent 3 days programming. Alert! Brennan Jake has been detected in proximity to classified hazardous specimens. Per Protocol 847B, do not enable Jake Brennan's culinary experiments. All personnel are advised to maintain safe distance and prepare Medical Bay for potential incidents. Reeve stared at the screen, then at the stack of incident reports on his desk that all had Jake's name on them. Then, at the commendation request from the Galactic Medical Council that also had Jake's name on it. Then back at the screen, he opened a new document and began typing his transfer request. Again, for the 5th time this month. Then he deleted it. Again, for the 5th time this month. The probable mistake needed him. Someone had to maintain order on this floating circus of biological improbabilities. His communicator buzzed. It was Quilnax. He's looking at the neural shutdown plant. I've evacuated to Medical Bay. May the universe have mercy on us all. Reeve closed his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. Back in the lab, Jake had his sample kit open and was carefully taking notes. Pip had positioned near the door, flashing supportive but cautious green. The crystalline plant sparkled invitingly under the grow lights. Jake pulled out his scanner and began recording observations. He had no intention of touching the plant. Not today, anyway. He'd learned something valuable from the Barry incident. Documentation first, experimentation second, apologizing to Quilnax third. But he was definitely taking notes. Because here's the thing about Earth and humanity that the galaxy was slowly, painfully learning. Earth was a death world. Not the most extreme death world, but extreme enough. Humans had evolved eating things that wanted to kill them, drinking liquids that were mildly poisonous, and thriving in conditions that would make most species file environmental complaints. Earth's food pyramid hadn't prepared Jake for the galaxy. It had just made him uniquely qualified to look at the galaxy's definitely don't eat this list and think, challenge accepted. Jake turned toward where he imagined a camera might be if his life were a quasar documentary, which honestly it kind of felt like at this point. You know what Earth's food pyramid taught me? He said to no one in particular, or maybe to everyone. Absolutely nothing. We put bread at the bottom and called it science. We decided tomatoes were vegetables for tax purposes. We eat cheese, which is basically controlled spoilage, and we love it. Our food safety standards were written by people who thought you could cure diseases with bloodletting. Pip flashed amused orange. Which is exactly why I'm perfectly qualified for xenobotany. Because Earth didn't prepare me for anything, which means I'm not hindered by any reasonable expectations. He grinned. I'm like a biological wild card, and this galaxy has no idea what to do with wild cards. In the distance, very faintly, they could hear Quilnax screaming something that sounded like, "Put down the sample kit, Brennan." Jake looked at Pip. Pip looked at Jake. Probably should go reassure him, I'm not dying, Jake said. Pip wobbled in agreement, flashing a color that roughly translated to, "Same time tomorrow?" "Same time tomorrow, Jake." Confirmed. He sealed up his notes, carefully stored the sample kit, and headed for the door. The crystalline plant pulsed behind him, still safely contained, still absolutely forbidden. For now, because the probable mistake was still cataloging the galaxy's botanical wonders, Jake Brennan was still employed despite everyone's better judgment. And Dr. Quilnax's stress vibration had become such a constant that the engineering team had started using it to calibrate sensitive instruments. Somewhere in the ship's database, a new file was being created. Potentially human-compatible specimens. Approach with optimistic caution and medical supervision. It was, Jake thought as he walked down the corridor to apologize to his doctor, going to be a great rest of the mission. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but humanity had arrived, and humanity was hungry.